Hello and welcome to Atomo Workshop. Today I'm going to be restoring the Atari 800 XL. Let's get started.
I bought this for £85 on eBay with shipping. It came with the main unit, supposedly working, a 1050 floppy drive, untested, and a 1010 cassette drive, not working, as well as a cartridge of Defender. The computer has seen much better days. As you can see, it has yellowed significantly. Both the main case and the keys have been affected and will need a lot of work to bring it back to normal. I did check to see what was in fact working, and after some quick tests I found the main unit to be completely fine, no issues at all. I had no way of testing the floppy drive, and the cassette drive seemed to only have one reel spinning. Defender works great too, though I suck at it. I should also note the state of the power supply for the computer. It is in really rough shape. I have no clue what happened to this poor thing, but maybe if I just open it up and see the state of things... What the hell is going on in here? I'm gonna have to pass on that one. I'll just seal this back up.
Before I disassemble everything, I should come clean. I actually recorded this all back in May for my father's birthday in August. It was his first computer he ever owned, and I thought he might get a kick out of having another one. I honestly have no other excuse than laziness as to why this took so long. This is why it's shot in my old living room rather than the workshop.
Anyway, back to the task at hand. The 800 XL is actually really easy to take apart. It's just a matter of taking out a handful of screws and it will open right up. At first, I didn't think you could take this ribbon cable out for the keyboard and was about to go on a massive rant about how poor design it was, thinking it was similar to the pain-in-the-ass original Game Boy with its permanently attached screen, but as it turned out, it was just really stiff, and with some gentle persuasion, it came out just fine. Once the two halves were separated, I took to taking out the main board. This revealed some weird patterns on the RF shield that mimicked the pattern of the slots in the case. Not sure why this is, but it doesn't seem to be damaged at all, just a little dusty, so I left it at that. This also gave me a better look at the condition of the bottom case piece, and honestly, it doesn't look that bad. The yellowing was mild and the marks could be easily removed, so I was confident that I could get things back to factory condition. Following this, I took to removing everything on the top case piece, including the keyboard, cartridge port doors, and even the black accent piece. I found the yellowing strange on this top piece. It was definitely caused by the sun, and as you can see, there seems to have been some cable sat on top of it while it was being stored.
While taking this apart, I noticed something a little odd. For some reason, it still has the plastic covers on all the metal accent pieces, similar to that plastic cover you get on a brand new phone screen. Clearly the old owner seemed to care about it, or just couldn't be bothered to take it off.
Next up was to take off all the keys from the keyboard, taking special note of the orientation of the springs and that the metal keys use a different type of spring. And boy am I glad I did this, not only as it would make treating yellow on the keys easier, but because of how dirty it was under them. I mean, just look at this. It was disgusting. I thought this was a good point to clean everything. I started by vacuuming up the bigger dust clumps, then came in with some rubbing alcohol and a paper towel to get everything else, paying special attention to the keyboard and cleaning every individual key. And as for the marks on the computer, I used baking soda on a wet paper towel to scrub them away. This works great for these marks as it acts as a very mild abrasive, taking off surface marks but not actually damaging the plastic. I also decided to clean the pins for the computer's various ports. They were filthy too, and I was worried it might affect the reliability of the computer. This also meant taking out the cartridge port and cleaning the pins in there, which was quite tricky.
And now for the Retro Bright. This is the exact same thing I used in the SNES restoration video, and in fact I did that restoration in order to practice for the Atari. I wanted to get the technique down on something that wasn't as valuable.
Like in the SNES restoration, this was just a lot of repeating the same task, putting down a piece of clean wrap, spread the hydrogen peroxide cream on it, then again on the actual piece being retro-brighted, and set it out in the sun. Then come back occasionally to turn the pieces and move the cream around a little, in order to avoid the dreaded streaking effect.
This was the case for all the plastic pieces in this restoration. I even did the keys on the keyboard because I noticed the letters had gone yellow. But, as it turns out, this was a huge mistake.
After a few hours in the sun, the case pieces were done. I took them back inside and rinsed them off, and they looked fantastic. Just look at how well the bottom case piece came out. Sadly, the keyboard keys were not so lucky. When they were first rinsed off, they looked fine. The letters were white again, and it looked nice and clean. But after a few minutes, they started to do this marble effect, and it happened to every key. Apparently, you should not retro-bright keys that are mainly black using this method. It almost always ends in disaster.
Luckily, when I gave this to my dad for his birthday, he actually quite liked the marble keyboard and told me to leave it as is. So I guess it's just another lesson learned.
Keyboard disaster aside, putting everything back together was easy. It was the easiest part of the whole restoration. But just look at it now. It looks so much better. I am very pleased with how the plastics came out on this. I also double checked that it still powered on alright, and it did, with no issues. Moving on, it was the next day and it was time to look at the floppy and cassette drives. Starting with the floppy drive, I unscrewed the case to separate the two halves, then disconnected the cables running throughout the board. This let me remove the drive mechanism and left me with the main board still attached to the bottom case piece. Before I had opened it up, I noticed the board rattled around in the case. So I suspected there were some broken plastic stalks in there, and lo and behold, 3 broken stalks and 1 detached rubber foot. I took a look at fixing those later. All that was left to do on the drive disassembly was to remove the main board, which was fiddly, but I got there in the end, and then to separate this brown plastic piece from the case so I could retrobrite the main case. This was just a few pivot points and it popped right out. I followed the same process as with the computer. I cleaned it with rubbing alcohol, scrubbed it with baking soda to get out the marks, then caked it in hydrogen peroxide and set it out in the sun. While I waited on the floppy drive to finish the retrobrite process, I started work on the cassette drive. This was much the same as the floppy drive, lots of snaps and screws, and the only major difference was that I had to find out why it didn't work. And upon opening it up, it was obvious what was wrong. The belt that spins the left reel had broken.
To my surprise, you can still get a belt for one of these things. So it was just a matter of ordering one in and putting in the new part.
After getting everything taken apart, I again retrobrited the case pieces, and by this time the floppy drive cases had finished, so I brought those in and set to work fixing the stalks and the rubber foot. The stalks were fiddly, but with some patience and a lot of super glue on my fingers, I managed to stick them back in. I was a little worried about how strong they'd be, but months later they're still going, so I guess they're alright.
After putting this all back together, I tried testing it with this DOS disc, and as it turns out, this doesn't work. The read head goes back and forth once or twice, and then it starts to hum, and after trying to fix it over the months, it just doesn't work.
The cassette drive, however, came back together perfectly. Once I had that new belt in, I popped in a cassette and tried to load Centipede, and after a few minutes of high-pitched squealing, the game finally booted. The drive works great now, but as it turns out, I'm terrible at Centipede as well.
So, final thoughts. I absolutely love how this computer came out, keyboard aside, and my dad absolutely loves having his childhood computer back. And I absolutely love this cassette drive. It is adorable in how crappy it is, and it is just cute how slow it is. It's amazing. I love it. And this floppy drive, however, can bite me. It will not work. I cannot fix it. I tried. I will work it out one day, but today's not that day. Well, that's going to have to be it for now, folks. I hope you enjoyed this one, as it was a long time in the making. Please let me know what you thought of it below, and I'll see you next time, where I'll return to prop making. See you then.